I have 100 days in Scorched Earth, Wildcard's latest map to join the remastered ARK Survival Ascended. A map with new caves and creatures like the Oasisaur, and new items like carts and trains. Do I have what it takes to conquer this barren scorched wasteland in just 100 days? Well, let's find out.
Oh, it's my first look at Scorched. And it looks like Scorched.
I immediately got started by farming some bushes and getting stone, thatch and wood to make myself a pickaxe. With the pickaxe in my possession, I checked if there were any good starter tames nearby. There wasn't, so instead I got some flint and made a hatchet. Before the daytime temperatures became too unbearable, I was able to make myself some cloth armour to help with the heat. With clothes sorted, my next target was water. So I began to run over to the red obelisk where I believed there would be some water in the form of a river. I ran into some Lystros who I killed for hide before I ran into something much scarier.
Oh no! I didn't see that.
Running away had cost me all my water, but luckily I didn't need a body of water to regenerate it. Simply hitting a cactus refills your water. I ended up running into a pair of really good level Morellatop babies, which I wanted to tame. Except I'd never see them again. I eventually made my way down to the rivers in the centre of the map, where I could get some much needed water. But the peace was soon disturbed by the sound of a jerboa.
Oh, there it is, there it is. Level 60? I thought that's supposed to be like level 1.
Near the water I heard that exact jerboa, so I went and knocked it out and fed it berries to tame it. It tamed and almost immediately began telling me a weather event was incoming, but I wasn't sure which.
I don't think that's superheat, so I remember superheat's like digging. Is a superheat as armor?
Luckily, there was quite a bit of time before the superheat which it was telling me about was rolling in, so I made a small base with some storage to be able to cook up some meat, boarded a parasaur and punched it unconscious. It tamed was put to work by gathering some narco berries. Before I then began to try and kill a Morellatops with it, but parasaurs are hardly the best fighting dino, so I had to run so it wouldn't die, but it then died to a raptor. I took revenge by killing the raptor, but as my jerboa had predicted earlier, the superheat had now rolled in. But down by the river, the heat wasn't too bad, so I stayed back at base until the superheat was over. I killed some Lystros for hide in the meantime, but then for some idiotic reason, which I have no explanation for, I decided to go explore, whilst the superheat was still active. I think you can guess how this goes.
I've got hypothermia. 77 degrees! Damn! I didn't realise it was that hot.
When I woke up back at base, the superheat was over. On my way to get my things, I ran into an explorer net which gave me a bunch of levels, something that would probably come in handy later on. I got my things and continued my journey, killing pegos, lystros, parasaurs, until this happened.
My game's crashed. Again. Ah.
I was now back at base, so I had to run back out to get my things again, and annoyingly the XP note was already opened as I had just walked through it moments ago before I crashed. But even more annoying was that none of the levels that I'd got from the XP note saved. Nevertheless, I got my things, killed the pego again, and the lystro, and the parasaur, and then a second one. Clearly that crash had messed with me as I ran off a cliff and killed myself. Yeah, I went and retrieved my things once again, before leaving the river area to find myself a mount and stumbling upon this parasaur, who I bowled, knocked out, and once it was tamed I saddled it up and had a mount once again. And this time I took it out on adventure to find metal.
Can see metal right there.
I got into a fight with a Carno which my parasaur had only just survived, and before I knew it, I was burnt alive. And then again. And then I died to a scorpion before I could even place a sleeping bag, so I had to return to base. Whilst waiting for the superheat to be over, I noticed something very odd.
What? Oh my god, how have I got the engrams and I'm not the level yet?
I assumed the game had saved the engrams when I had unlocked them before I then crashed and lost the levels, yet I've somehow kept the engrams. I have no clue how this works, but I'm not going to complain. Once the heat was over though, I teleported back to my Parasaur, which was carnage.
Matty! 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 No! Oh my god, I'm almost dead again. I'm dead again. Oh, vulture.
The vultures kept killing me, to the point where I had run out of sleeping bags and had to run all the way from base. What could possibly go wrong? Surprisingly nothing. Well, apart from my Parasaur being killed. I got my stuff and killed the remaining Scorpions and Vultures, but trying to get the metal on foot on Scorched when you keep running into rock golems and more soup heats can be a little bit difficult. I died a couple more times today and then just camped out at base till the heat was over. Once over, I used some parkour to make my way up the rocks and collect some much needed metal, before I ran off the cliff and jumped and parachuted my way back to base. I landed next to a herd of parasaurs, so I knocked out the parent and tamed it and claimed babies. I brought the brand new gang back to base and used one to farm narco berries to produce narcotics. I farmed rocks and cactus to begin making clay needed for adobe structures. I spent the majority of day 2 doing this until a sandstorm rolled in and I was forced to take a break. When I returned from my break, it was now a super heat. You just love to see it. Once over, I found myself an Explorer Knight which gave me 11 levels, which was still not enough to let me open this ringed red drop that no doubt had the best gear inside, like an Ascendant Rex blueprint. But with the metal being scarce near my base, I took my Parasaur back out to the mountains to get some. I made it safely, but for the life of me couldn't remember how I got up to the metal, so I retreated on my Parasaur to try and find a different route. But the other route wasn't exactly safe.
Sorry, Parasaur. One more.
I did run into some crystal and made a spyglass, which isn't all too bad, and it came in quite handy as I spotted some easily accessible metal with it. But after waiting for a clear route, I made a dash for it, but ran into a Carno just as I approached the metal. But the Carno wasn't the only problem, as I ended up getting abused by a Scorpion. After killing both Scorpion and Carno, I finally got to the metal, and with a good amount collected, I left. But with me being Parasaurless, I used the same method as before and parachuted back to base. I landed and had to run the final bit, but ran into a stuck Procoptodon which was too good of a tame to miss out on. I quickly got some wood and materials and made wooden billboards to trap it in next to the rock and knock it out. Obviously these guys eat rare mushrooms though, which I don't have any of, so I had to leave it unconscious and go back to base, and then got stuck in a sandstorm, which slowed me down entirely. I got back to the kangaroo and stuffed it full of narco berries, so now it was time to get the mushrooms. I scaled the mountain in the middle of the map hoping to find some crystal which would give me some, but it had no crystal at all. So instead I jumped off and parachuted over to these cliffs which I did see it had some crystal. That problem was now solved, but a new one had risen.
Ay, ay, ay. The kangaroo's fallen through the ground.
Someone in my chat, as I livestreamed this whole challenge, said that it was okay for me to clip through the map and tame it. So I did that, but then I couldn't get it out of the mesh again once it was tamed, so this is the last time you and I will ever see this kangaroo. I hope you said goodbye. Not getting that kangaroo would make movement around the map quite limited still, so I went out to try and find myself a Lamantria to get some fly. But after running what felt the entire map, I finally found 2, but they were rubbish levels. I found an Explorer note and then a sandstorm rolled in. I found a Lamantria during the sandstorm however, so I began to knock it out, but it got out and flew away.
I managed to bowler a lower level one, knock it out and tamed it, and now I finally had flight. Now that I could move quickly, I decided to get some silk by killing other Lamantrias so that I could make desert cloth armour, but this led me to the north of the map, where it isn't exactly safe.
I soon ran out of food once I had tamed one, and then had to land, but with low health and being in the north, disaster was about to strike. This death turned out to be quite a significant one, as my Lamantria had died, and then I got stuck in a death loop where I would spawn and then die to the many different aggressive creatures in the north without being able to collect my items and just creating many death icons. After many deaths, I eventually got to my stuff and escaped with it, and later returned back to base after quite an eventful day. I started day 7 by making myself an RG saddle as clearly the Lamantras weren't working. I made my way over to the mountains and began searching for an RG, and I quickly found a really good level one. Placed down some wooden dino gates as a trap and then lured the RG in. And in the midst of a sandstorm, the RG finished taming. I then took it out on flight to get this XP night for some easy levels before heading back to base. With an RG amongst my collection now, I took it out to the mountains to try and get some metal. I brought the metal back to base and placed it in the smithies, before heading out to kill this Anki, who you can see had this parent icon above it, which means I can claim and tame this baby Anki. I brought it back to base and I wanted to now tame my next creature, a Dodic. However, I couldn't find any wild babies, so I had to scoop this one and bring it to base to knock it out and tame it the old-fashioned way. My Anki had now grown up, so I equipped a saddle and picked up with an RG and took it out to get obsidian, crystal and metal. Whilst all the metal cooked up, I made electronics trying to make a chainsaw, but I was short on cementing paste, so a quick trip out to the desert to kill some creatures to get chitin to turn into paste. Back at base, the Dodic had finished taming, so I began farming rocks to get sand to make clay, and by the following day I had a lot of it, and began making adobe foundations for my forever base, as I didn't plan on living on full foundation forever. But with enough items crafted for a base, I headed out to find their location, the green obelisk, on the flat area next to the water. I placed the behemoth gate and then a bunch of foundations, and with all my items placed in storage, I flew back to the base. No, I didn't, a sandstorm showed up. Fun. I actually decided to keep working throughout the storm, getting wood with my chainsaw, and once it was over I flew back to base to make adobe walls and placed them at the new base. I actually built quite a funky looking house for once before I ran out of materials. I went and collected my Dodic and placed a smithy and fab at the new base and finally finished off the build. Next I went out to get metal to fill the forges in the new base, before I spent the next day securing the base off with the walls so no intruders would get in. I flew out and found this good level filer though, who I dropped in this very makeshift trap and knocked it out. I also found this black and green terror bird running about, so I decided to claim it, as well as finding this baby wolf, and so I took that as well. But best of all, the filer that I had just knocked out had a baby, so I tamed that as well and brought both back to base. I made myself an oil pump which would help get oil down in the future. I found this insane red drop and looted a few more before I got stuck in yet another sandstorm. I found this blue Dodic who was better than what I had, so I knocked it out. And once it was tamed, I used it to get a bunch more stone to make more adobe walls to finish off the top of my base so nothing would fall in. Once done, I went to the dunes to get more chitin to turn it into cementing paste later on. But I thought using a Megatherium might be a little bit more effective, so I found one and got it into a trap. But it broke out because it was made out of wood. So I went back to base to get metal billboards and returned and trapped it and successfully knocked it out. But obviously it's a little bit too big to be carried by an RG, so I had to go make cryos, and once it was tamed I immediately took it out to the desert to get more chitin and turn it into cementing paste. I got myself crystal to make myself an industrial grill later as well. I found the most insane yellow drop of all time and destroyed all the metal structures that was inside to get more paste, metal and polymer to make an indie forge, but obviously an indie forge on its own is pointless, so I went out to get metal to fill it up. My next goal was to get a chemistry bench, but I needed silica poles for the electronics to make it, so I went to the river where I knew that they spawned on ARK Survival Evolved, but there were none. I ended up googling online and finding out that the red obelisk has plenty of them, and so it did. But this almost cost me my RG, who nearly died to a pack of raptors. With the pearls I made a bunch of electronics, whilst also getting obsidian to make more polymer. I got round to making some more ammo for this shotgun that I found in a drop, before I found a Thyla who had even better levels than both of my tame fighters already. I placed the Thyla into a trap and began to knock it out, except I accidentally hit it as it was going down and ruined the taming effectiveness. Great. So I left to let it wake up, but once it was back up I knocked it out again and tamed it without hitting it an extra time. However, I now wanted to mess with the trains from the Bob's Adventure Tall Tales DLC, so I made a single track and placed it at base. It seemed pretty cool, but it was super expensive, so I had to go out and get more metal and stone to make more cementing paste. So whilst the metal smelted, I got to breeding my thylers to take caving later on. And whilst this one grew up, I went out to get more chitin. I ran into one of the new Oasisaurs from the Adventure Pack DLC as well, but I wasn't exactly sure how it was tamed, so I left it alone for now. I ended up killing a deathworm whilst out here too. I ended up getting quite a lot of chitin, so much in fact that I had to make more storage outside of my base to store it. I did another metal run and continued breeding my thylers as I was looking for one which had the best stats. All those materials I'd just been farming allowed me to place my very first train onto the tracks, and after a little bit more building I was able to take it out for a little ride. But however I couldn't get too far as I didn't extend the tracks far enough. But it was still fun, so I began making more tracks and taking the train out up to the cliffs where the metal spawned, so I could have a nice little route up there. I did extend the tracks to the left as well, but not too far as I didn't really have much reason to be going that way. I attached 2 extra cars onto my train and also made a third route down into the dunes, and then decided that would be enough of the trains for now. I got to making narcotics so I could begin taming more stuff, and ammo so I could have protection in case anything went wrong. I started by killing some parisers and harvesting their body with chainsaws to get so much hide, so that I could make this Ascendant Thyler saddle that I found earlier on. For some reason though, I thought trying to kill this Titanosaur with my Thyler was a good idea to level it up. It's not. I ended up running with half health as I just knew I was not going to kill it, so I took my Thyler to the central cave to take on my very first cave instead, and it doesn't fit through the entrance. I must say that the caves look stunning however once I did get inside, but yet nothing was spawning, which was the same issue I had in Survival Evolved, just kind of annoying that they didn't fix that bug. I got into the main room where there were a couple creatures that had spawned, but nothing that would stop me from getting the artifact. On the way out I did see this yellow drop, but I had no way of getting to it, so I left. A few creatures had spawned on my way out, so I got my Megatherium out just to be safe, but soon after I was out and on my way back to base with my very first artifact. As my Thyler didn't get many levels from the cave, I took out to get a few more, which did lead me towards the Wyvern Trench. My method was to lure the Wyverns out one by one and kill them. With it seemingly going quite well, I decided to go into the trench. I took this first egg and I thought I had an easy route out. In fact I did, and as I was feeling so good I went in to check for a second egg, until a Wyvern began attacking me. I was able to kill it by getting onto my Thyler, before I went back in to check for more eggs and steal more. By the end I had left with 4 eggs in my position, and I decided to equip whilst I was ahead. I returned back to base and placed down a few ACs ready to incubate the eggs. I hatched up one of the Wyverns hoping it wouldn't need any milk with my current rates, and it didn't. I took it out to get levels and test out before hatching a Lightning Wyvern and a higher level Fire, as I now knew Wyvern milk wasn't required to raise them up. Whilst they're raised, I messed around with the train a little bit more by putting an industrial forge on its back, as well as the Anki and Argy, and taking it up to the metal spawns to go get some more metal. I filled the forge with the metal that I'd just got and set off back to base on my brand new mobile metal refinery, and got back in time just to watch my Fire Wyvern grow up. So once it was ready I took it out to get some levels as well as check some more drops on the map. The best way I could think to level it was to go to the dunes and get explorer notes and kill everything like deathworms and other wyverns as I ended up near the Wyvern Trench. My rampage went on for a little while until I was forced to retreat due to a superheat. I made the shovel back at base to try out one of the new treasure maps, but then a sandstorm rolled in so I had to wait a little bit longer. The way it works with the shovel is that you take it to an area where you use your shovel on the ground to dig and a chest pops out in the location, and it gives you some good loot. However, I'm not sure fur is really too useful on a hot desert map. I wanted to mess around with the adventure pack a little bit more though, and more specifically the building skins, and give my base a new look. I then decided it was time to tame a Rex, and with the SE Rex spawns glitch still existing, I went for it. However, I ended up finding something just a little bit better, a really good level Phasalo. I went and got my C4s and attempted to tame it, but it didn't go well as I hardly knew what I was doing. After almost killing myself, I went back to base to make giddy armour, then returned, threw C4 at it again, exploded it, hopped on its back and began riding. Now I just had to smash it into some rocks.
A few moments later.
How long does this take? I got thrown off the Phasalo and had to blow it up again to continue the tame, and no joke, this tame took me over 1.5 hours.
Oh no, so close. Oh, it's out.
After spending what felt like a billion years knocking it out, I now had to feed it to tame it. I then found 2 treasure maps, and the first one was absolutely insane. Same can't be said about the second one though. When I got back to base, I made ammo for my new shotgun, and with the Phasalo now tamed, I went back to trying to find a good level Rex, which was my plan in the first place. I finally found a good level 140 female, so placed down a very makeshift trap and lured it in whilst I was dying to a heat wave, meaning I had to knock it out from the safety of a tent. My crossbow ran out of durability whilst knocking it out, so I resorted to punching it, which was stupid as I could just make a bow and knock it out. After sitting in the tent due to another superheat, my Rex tamed. And back at base, I mass produced gunpowder and shotgun ammo so I could begin exploring the new cave on Scorched Earth. This cave has a water entrance and one where I happened to find a loot drop. Inside it looked pretty cool as I found myself yet another drop before I found a third. But that's all this cave has to offer. Just drops, no artifacts, which I was kind of surprised about. So I left. The next day I went to the wyvern trench to find myself a better wyvern egg. The first egg wasn't good, neither was the second. Or the third. I did take 1 egg so I could get the aggro and kill some wyverns though. I did end up taking a second lightning egg as well and a poison, but none that were good level. The following day I took the train out so I could get some more metal. I thought it was now time to go do the other caves in the 100 days though, so I flew out to the mountains and began looking for the cave entrance, but I couldn't find it. After searching for quite a while, I gave up and flew back to base and went back to the wyvern trench again. I ended up being able to search basically the entire nest, as for some reason there weren't many wyverns. I returned back to the base and hatched a brand new level 180 fire egg that I just got, and once it was grown the next day I took it out to get some easy levels in the dunes, but got stuck in a sandstorm. I really hate sandstorms. I thought a death worm which was a little bit too close for comfort, and then returned back to base. I now had a very good wyvern, but I still wanted more than just one good Rex so I could begin building the boss Rex army. So I headed out to the Rex spawn to look for a second, and I found it, a level 150 male Rex. But my crossbow broke once again, so I had to get the final few hits in with a club. As I'm editing this, I've really got to wonder why I just never brought a second crossbow. Really stupid. It tamed and I brought it back to base to check the stats and it had much better health than my other one. However, I wasn't satisfied with the melee stat, so I made more arrows to go tame another. I killed a few Rexes and then found a level 140 who had a child. I knocked it out and then tamed it, and also claimed the baby, cause why not? However, it didn't have the better melee stat that I was looking for, so I brought it back to base and I tried another day. And that other day would be the very next day as I went back to the dunes to kill more Rexes. I spotted another good level Rex and did the same old stuff and tamed it, but its stats once again weren't good. So we go again. Nope, I want better. I found what I thought was better and knocked it out. It wasn't better. I had enough of trying to tame Rexes, so the next day I attempted to do the desert cave, and inside it looked incredible.
Left or right? Let's go left. There's the artifact of the destroyer.
I got out of the cave, cried my Thyla. Immediately after, I went out to go and find this treasure chest which I had just gotten, and inside it had some quite good loot. Back at base, I made myself an industrial cooker to make dye to dye my dreadlocks, only to realise it's part of a mod I have installed and the dyes don't work on it. I still wanted better Rexes for the Manticore fight though, so I began killing a billion more Rexes and finally found a high level one, trapped it, knocked it out and tamed it. I checked the stats and it had the good health stat which I was looking for. When I got back to base, it was looking kinda full, so I now had to go get some crystal oil to make a cryophage and cryopods to clean it up a little bit. I then took on the task of combining my best Rex stats so I could begin breeding for mutations. It didn't take long to get the stats onto a good male, but for some reason I just could not get the stats onto a female, so I gave out and went back out to the dunes to try and find myself an Oasisaur to tame. I found one not after too long, as they are quite hard to miss. The way to tame them is to bring the essence of a dead dino and place it in its inventory, and then that dino spawns and you have to defend it from vultures. It turns out to be quite an easy tame if you have a decent shotgun or whatever, which is pretty cool, I guess. I spent the rest of the day bringing the Oasisaur home, as it is so slow. With it being the new creature, I had no clue what it ate, as berries and meat weren't working.
They eat plant pots apparently, which you get by making them, and then filling them using the new shovel on bushes and trees. It's unique to say the least. Both new dinos now tamed and ticked off my checklist for this 100 days, I went back to breeding Rexes so I could defeat my original goal, the Alpha Manticore. I finally got the female with the good stats and left it to raise whilst I took out one of my other Rexes to level it up, but I soon got bored and decided to take on my third and final cave, one that I tried to find before but I couldn't see it. So this time I decided to search with a bit more care and finally found it. I ran inside with my shotgun ready and Thyla in a cryo just in case I needed it. But once again this cave looked stunning, but it was quite easy to get through. On the way back to base I found a red drop with a Rex Saddle BP in that wasn't the best. I also killed a Daedon who had a baby, which I claimed as it would become needed later on for when I decided to heal my Rexes after leveling. Getting that Rex Saddle made me want a better one, so I checked for a few drops but found nothing. This led me to the Wyvern Trench though, so I checked for any good level eggs. But again, nothing. So I searched for another creature that I needed, a Eutyrannus, and I actually found one. I trapped it, but then it roared me off the cliff. Luckily I was able to get back up though. But it then fear-roared my Wyvern, which flew away. I wonder if you can guess where this is going. The Uti then escaped my poorly placed trap, and my Wyvern just refused to come save me. So I was forced to kill the Uti, as I didn't really want to die. This would be a decision that would come back to haunt me quite a bit. I spent some time looting and got a really good Rex Saddle. As I mentioned before about the Uti, I was starting to feel the effects of killing one, as I spent 2 whole days searching and found none. I gave up and at base I began breeding the Rexes to begin getting mutations. The first batch were all identical stat females who would be my female breeders, and whilst they were growing I did make sure that they had enough food so that they wouldn't starve, as that would be really bad and is something that I've done in the past. As it was getting close to boss Rex season, I went out to get a Lystro to help with the leveling that I'd be doing in the future. Then I just waited around for the Rexes to raise up. Once all the females were grown, I brought in the male and let things happen. And would you believe it, on the very first batch I got a mutation on the melee stat, but it was on a female. So whilst that grew up I did a little bit more loot hunting. Once the Rex was grown I bred it with the base male to get the stats on cross onto a male. The first was a female, so was the second, but the third was finally a male with the mutation, so we were good to go. I got bored whilst waiting for that one to grow up, so I went out and attempted to kill a Titanosaur with my Wyvern, and it didn't go as bad as you would imagine. I wasn't close to getting it killed, but for some reason the fire damage wasn't doing that much damage to it, and it was just taking too long, so I gave up. I then returned back to base to continue mutating my Rexes to get better health and melee stats, as well as leveling up this one Rex which I did grow up by killing many baby Rexes, so I could at least have one good Rex to terrorise the map with for now. And it was only then, after 4 days of breeding, that I got my second mutation, one of my most unlucky spells breeding. But the mutation was on a health stat, so I now had one male, 1 mutation on the health and 1 on the melee. I waited around for this male to raise up, and as soon as it was, I was back on the mutation grind. My next mutation was on my health stat, again on a female. And a few days later I'd gotten a few more mutation, was up to 4 health and 2 melee. Whilst this Rex grew up, I went out to try my luck with a Uti out in the mountains again. However, it was a little bit cloudy, and visibility was non-existent. I thought I had found one, but it was a Rex. Not really sure how I got the two mixed up. However, I found nothing, so gave up and flew back to base.
At base I got the mutated female over onto a male, and whilst that grew up I went to search for the infamous Yuti again, but it was impossible, it didn't exist. So I left the mountains again, but returned and finally found one after days of searching. It was only a low level, but it will do at this point. So I trapped it, knocked it out, and tamed it. Why is it on fire? Can I do damage to my own tame, to my own fight? Oh no. Oh, why did I do that? With it now getting close to boss fighting time, I decided to give up on the mutations and began breeding the boss Rex army. And whilst it was growing, I decided to go hit some desert drops to try and find myself a good Rex saddle blueprint. I found 2 drops, but neither had what I wanted, so I went back to the new cave again to look for more drops. No Rex saddle today. Next I took my Anki to get some flint and stone to produce spark powder, whilst I began to arrange my Rexes to mass produce eggs, so that I could begin levelling all the Rexes with the stats looking around this. I also took this opportunity to begin making this Rex saddle BB that I had gotten, but first I had to drink a mind wipe tonic so that I could put every single point I had into the crafting skill stat, and then I could begin making the saddles. The saddles came out at around 60 to 80 armor points, which wasn't too bad, as I did have some ascendant saddles to complement some other Rexes I had found in drops. I spent some more time levelling the remaining Rexes. There was still one more thing that I needed, a Yuti, which I did find a few moments ago. It was looking like my accidental death of the first Yuti was coming back to haunt me, as I couldn't find a single Yuti again. But lo and behold, I found one on day 93. I'd never been more relieved to see one. So I trapped it, knocked it out, and tamed it, then cried it before any bad stuff could happen to it. I got the Yuti back to base and began levelling up by killing some Rexes, which took a long time, as the Yuti didn't do much damage. But with all my dinos now levelled and creatures healing at base, and the artifact collected, I had just one more thing to get. Wyvern talons. So over I went to the trench to cause absolute carnage. I got 15 wyverns from each wyvern variant, the fire, poison and lightning, and flew back to base to begin lining the Rexes up at the obelisk right outside my base. But actually I still needed one last thing, gas masks, which I needed absorbent substrate for, and black pearls to make that. So off I flew to the dunes to try and kill death worms and get lucky, and I did. On the first kill I got enough black pearls from it. I made the substrate and then the gas masks, and then did one last meta run to make as much shotgun ammo as possible, and as the sun rose on day 100 I summoned in the Alpha Manticore. I teleported over and immediately began shooting at the Manticore with my shotgun, before hopping on my Yuti and giving my Rexes coverage and letting them do the business. However, the Manticore then just began flying around and not landing. But when it did land, the Rexes were doing damage. One thing I had now realised is that my Yuti was really low level and torpor was low, and its torpor was rising quickly and was about to knock out. So I had to get on one of my Rexes and continue the fight on them. But after a little bit, the rock golems began spawning, and they were taking the attention of the Rexes, which was a bit of a problem. And once the rock golems were dealt with, we focused back on the Manticore. It was finally defeated, and within 100 days, Scorched Earth on Alpha was completed. I hope you enjoyed this journey just as much as I did, as playing this brand new Scorched Earth on ARK Survival Ascended was an absolute blast. And if you did enjoy it, remember to please like and subscribe so that you don't miss my next video, which should be out soon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.